in the second year of the reign of President Donald J. Trump, when Bruce Rauner was governor of Israel and Rahm Emanuel was mayor of Chicago, during the bishopric of Elizabeth Eaton in the ELCA and Wayne Miller in the Metro Chicago Synod, the word of God came to ... Well, who did it come to? Who has either the credentials or the courage to receive the word of God in such a time, to have his or her name included in that august list of dignitaries? This morning's gospel reading begins with just such a parade of dignitaries, emperors and governors, rulers and priests. It was the red carpet of the first century, the who's who of both political and religious authority. Luke opens his story in this way for two reasons. One is to center John the Baptizer in real time. John was not a fairy tale, a once-upon-a-time character we read to our children. John was a human being whose parents we know. But until this moment in Luke's story, this enormous ellipse, John was known only as the unexpected child of elderly parents and a distant relative of another nobody whose name would be Jesus. So, for the record, what follows is based on true events. The second reason John drops all these names on our heads is to indicate the uphill climb that lay before John, the unlikelihood of his task. The word of God came to him, and it is unclear why. If God had something to say, if God had wanted to get the attention of Tiberius and Lysanias and Caiaphas and Annas, perhaps God would have been wiser to send someone of their status, someone to whom they could pay attention. God might have sent Tony Preckwinkle or Mitch McConnell or Chance the Rapper. Important people whose word and presence and voices command respect. But instead, God sent a kid straight from Little League right up into the majors, armed with only a compelling birth story, a sharp tongue, and a passionate heart. So where did John come from, and why would God choose him? Let me tell you a story. The Gospel of Luke opens, again in verifiable time, in the days of King Herod, in a side chapel in the temple, where an old priest named Zechariah was taking his turn at the altar. Zechariah carried an enormous, secret sorrow. He and his equally elderly wife had been unable to have children. And like Abraham and Sarah before them, Zechariah and Elizabeth had given up hope of ever having a family, but the heartache never went away. Enter, altar left, an angel of the Lord, who announced to Zechariah that he would be a father. "Buy some cigars, old man. Elizabeth will soon be great with child." Zechariah was understandably surprised and skeptical. "How can this be so?" he said. "I am old, and my wife is also getting along in years." Note to you, when an angel of the Lord knocks on your door, do not doubt it. The angel was offended. Ruffling wings with great umbrage, he snorted, "I am Gabriel. I've been sent by God with this good news, and you doubt me? Because you did not believe my words, you will become mute, unable to speak until the day these things occur." If you have ever longed to take words back once they are out of your mouth, you can imagine how Zechariah must have felt. To diss an angel of the Lord, not a good idea. But the angel's words were true. Zechariah was struck speechless for 9 months, and Elizabeth's belly soon bumped with baby. Who was it that Elizabeth carried in her wrinkled womb? It was John, a child born under circumstances almost as miraculous as his cousin Jesus. But aside from the extraordinary events surrounding his birth, John seemed little more than the much-loved son of very old parents. And the last we have heard of John until this morning in the 3rd chapter of Luke was the day he was taken at 8 days old to the temple to be circumcised and named. Though everyone assumed that this child would be named after his father, that this would be Zechariah Jr., Zechariah knew better, and he, though still tongue-tied, he reached for a pen and a paper and he wrote, "His name is John." And with that, Zechariah's tongue was loosed. He sang the song that Chris led us in this morning. John was snipped, John was named, and this happy little family disappeared into the ordinariness of their lives. Until the 15th year of the reign of Emperor Tiberius. But even then, as John squared his shoulders and prepared to preach, he is named as nobody special. Not yet John the Baptizer, who will you know for wearing camel hair clothes and losing his head in Herod's basement. Today, Luke identifies him as John, Zechariah's boy. Just a poor kid from a poor priest's family. Who in the world did John think he was? And what gave him the right to be included in the same sentence as all the rulers of the world? John didn't volunteer for this duty. John was chosen, picked to bring the word of God in a particular time, in a particular place. And for a significant time, he stood at the Jordan River and whipped the crowds into a lather about the one who was to come, the one whom Isaiah had promised. But after burning brightly for a time, John disappeared into the bowels of Herod's prison and was summarily separated from his head. John the Baptizer died, as do we all, but the word he carried did not. The time in which we live is as frightening and unsettling as any time in my memory. Powerful people, presidents, governors, mayors, bishops wield enormous authority over us. While in antiquity emperors ruled by fiat, today our leaders lead by tweet. With 144 characters, they can send the stock market tumbling, fill the streets with protesters, and send immigrants scurrying into hiding. What will become of them? These people who so capriciously control our lives. They will go the way of all the world's rulers. They will play a role for a time. Some of them doing God's work in the world, some pursuing their own interests. But regardless of the outcome of their work, they will all be done. Just as nobody quotes Emperor Tiberius anymore, so the great names of our age will one day exist only in the pages of a book. That's why the Word of God came to John. John was not the Word, but the Word of God came to him to shepherd, to steward, to share for a time, for God's time. Though many of us may be important only in the eyes of our mothers and fathers, we are not emperors or bishops. We can't even claim a miraculous birth, most of us. If you have such a story to tell, please see me after worship. But the Word of God comes to us, and the Word of God emerges through us. And like John, son of a skeptical, silent priest and a doddering but doting mother, we have a responsibility to speak it, whatever that word is. Perhaps it is simply a word of encouragement to one who has lost hope, or a word of forgiveness to someone who has harmed us. Sometimes that word is a word of reproof to someone we love who's walking a dangerous path. Or perhaps our word is nothing but a small light in a very dark world. We cannot change the world, but we can speak a word. We can speak God's word. So, in the second year of the reign of President Donald J. Trump, when Bruce Rauner was governor of Israel and Rahm Emanuel mayor of Chicago, during the bishopric of Elizabeth Eaton in the ELCA and Dwayne Miller in the Metro Chicago Synod, the word of God comes to